Welcome to the Scottish Property Podcast. This is a show where we aim to educate, inspire and entertain through real life stories and interviews from people in the Scottish property community.
As always, thanks for listening and give us a follow on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Remember to join us at our monthly networking events on the first Wednesday of every month. Tickets are available on our website. So without further ado, we'll just cut straight into this week's podcast. Ryan Quinn from Quinn Co Wealth Management. It's great to see you. Welcome to the Scottish Property Podcast.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you inviting me along.
We've got a bit of history, mate. I feel like I know you quite well, but we've only met a couple of times in person, but I think we've been following each other on social media, on Instagram for ages. So you build up that kind of connection anyway, don't you?
Definitely, yeah. I think we first met probably way back at a property kind of networking events in Glasgow years ago now. And like you say, just always keep in contact through social media, and it's funny how you feel like you know somebody through that realm.
Absolutely. And this is the great thing about getting you in the studio here today, because you've recently just become a qualified FIA?
IFA.
Financial advisor. Yeah.
Financial advisor. I try to get the letters in the right order there. So financial advisor, you've started up your own business here, and this is great because obviously just recently, personally speaking, I've been looking at other investments and giving myself up for obviously retirement. I mean, I'm only 43, right? But
giving myself up for retirement.
You've got to think. I mean, I should have been thinking about this stuff actually way back. I think we had a conversation lately. It was on the Diary of a CEO podcast, and there was a guy on there that specialises in teaching people about investing and all that, and money, being smart with your money, which I've heard you talk a lot about. And he was going through some figures and what it would look like if you started putting away whatever it was, £200 a month back when you were 20 years old, and the power of compounding and the position that you could be now. So it's not really until now, and I'm probably a wee bit late to the game now, that I'll look back on things.
You have to go and start putting £2,000 a month in catch up.
So we'll get on to that about what's possible and all the rest of it. But first, Ryan, give us a wee bit of background about who you are and what you do, how you got into this space.
Yeah, probably back around uni time. After I finished my uni course, early 20s, decided to go travelling after that for a year. Came home 23, and you've got that first initial years of your life where you're going to school and you have to go and you've got no other time apart from doing that. And then uni, again, very much a wee bit like school, but a wee bit more freedom. And then travelling, coming back, I kind of then got to that point where I was like, right, I need to make something work here. I need to start this working life. And it was more, I think I've always had a perception on, from the minute I wake up to the minute I go to bed, it's my time. So what do I do with my time that, I'm going to be happy, I'm going to enjoy, and I can make a living out of. So it's probably always came for that. To start with, it was sports coaching, football coaching. So I was heavily involved in that at uni. I worked with Falkirk Football Club and the SFA and stuff up there. So then when I came home from travelling, I got a job around the south side doing football development stuff. But on the side, I then started my own football coaching company as well at that point, which was great. So again, probably early to mid into late 20s, ran this company. But what I found is it grew, and it was relatively successful, I'd like to think, where I had classes on every single night.
So did you have a brand? Did you create a kind of brand then where it just grew into all different communities, different locations and stuff?
Yeah. So I started off very much because I saw a wee niche in the market from the football side of things where there wasn't a lot of provision for 3 to 5 year olds, nursery kids. So I created Adventure Football, it was called, and it was about taking the little ones on these adventures, and it really took off and grew in the community I was in, kind of south side Glasgow into East Wren. And then year after year, P1s, P2s, it just grew. Futsal classes, birthday parties, it just grew arms and legs, which was great. But going back to the time aspect, I had absolutely no time. The only time I would get was a Sunday afternoon if I wasn't doing a birthday party, and a Monday night, and I was still doing a full-time job plus assist every night. So I realised very quickly that although I was doing really well and there was money coming in, I had no time to do anything else, and it wasn't really sitting well with me.
Was that because you had to be there to run these events?
I had to be there predominantly because we notice when you start a business or you're running a business, you want to keep control, and a lot of the times the people that are coming, they're coming for your service specifically. So I did have coaches. I had about 5 coaches at one point doing other classes for me, and it was more putting on new classes because the demand was there. More kids were, or more parents were kind of reaching out, to the point where once maybe kind of mid-20, maybe about 24, 25, 25, 26 maybe, a friend of mine, a good friend of mine who I went to uni with, had been investing in property at uni. So he'd been investing since, 2021. And we were speaking one night, and I was like, tell me a bit more about this property stuff. How does it work? And he kind of told me about it, and my eyes just lit up, and he was just like, and I was kind of, so people meet your mum and going through it all, and he was like, that's the beauty of it. That's how it works.
This is back when? What year was this?
This was maybe, what am I? Maybe about, probably close to 10 years ago now.
Right.
10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so he kind of explained the ins and outs briefly of how property worked. And again, I very much realised that there's a lot more of my time getting back. It's not, of course, it's not a passive investment or a passive business, but I'd have a lot more of my time back than I would spending every single night coaching and working during the day. So I kind of started to, that's when I probably started employing coaches and bringing coaches into the football business. So it freed up some of my nights to go to viewings. Because again, what I realised very quickly is a non-negotiable with property investing is you need to do viewings, or you're not going to buy a property. So I managed to free up a couple of nights to go and do that. I was a YouTube learner and a Google learner. I just Googled everything and tried to learn through that. I used to come where I think I met you, Nick, at some of the network events in Glasgow. And then through that, bought my first 2 properties. But again, all I knew, I didn't realise that this was just one of the strategies with property. All I knew and all I would read online is you buy it below market value, 25% being the magic number. You have to then refurb it, blah, 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 and you get all your money out. So I was like, right, that's what property investing is. And then when my first 2 that I never got all my money out, I was like, well, I'm doing this wrong. I was like, oh shit, like what do I do now?
How much did you start with then? Did you build up a bit of money from the business then? And you had a bit of...
I was probably one of those, like... living on pot, I was back to the uni life. I lived on pot noodles and that, and I knew it from travelling as well, pot noodle life. So I went back to that type of thing and just kind of saved as much as I possibly could. Again, probably not really understanding or being willing to risk trying to get other people's money to do it. To start with, I thought if I can do it myself a couple of times, do it the right way is what I thought, which I then transpired I wasn't doing it the right, or I thought I wasn't doing the right way, then I can build it for there. So I bought my first one. Again, probably very naively, I bought my first one in the Rutherglen area, refurbed it, pulled money out, didn't get it all out. But I bought that for, I think, 40 grand, and I was renting out for 525 a month. Back again 7-8 years ago.
So good returns on them.
Great returns, but I didn't even know that was a good return at the time. I just wanted to invest in something. I wanted this time back. I wanted to go into all this type of thing.
And how much money did you leave in those first couple of deals then? Was that a lot?
It's probably about 10 to 12.
Right.
But that for me, that's fine. Like
that's a good deal now.
You were saying, like, looking back on that, you would have done things different. So what? I don't understand where you went. Where did you go wrong there? You were saying, or how would you do things differently?
That's the funny thing is, looking now, I didn't do anything wrong. But for what I was seeing online,
for what they were telling you,
what I was getting fed.
Right.
So I was getting fed this carrot dangling. You need to do it this way. And if you're not doing this way, come and sign up for this course. And I fell head right into it. I was like, well, I've done it wrong.
And are you still seeing that type of content now?
Probably not, because
you just need to look at Stephen Clark's Instagram, you
know? Probably not, because I'm following guys like you guys that have probably came round, and then the messages that you're sending out are not the same as as we said kind of offline there, like the property companies that came out of the financial crisis type thing. And that was kind of their tagline. So don't get me wrong, I went on a couple of courses. And
how much money did you spend on the education side of things?
Maybe 10 in total.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So it was about 2.5 for the first course I went down. It was a 4-day course. And then I went and signed up to the next thing that was more expensive, and realised after a couple of months that this is just nonsense. Like, I don't need to be here.
The same,
exactly. And then what I did,
regurgitating a different mannerism.
100%. And then I then went, but what I did see is, again, another story type thing, but I probably fell into, and again, I wasn't getting told that this was a word at that point, but I probably fell into the sourcing side while buying properties and being, because again, I went to courses down south near London, And I always remember the first course I went to, they're like, why are you here? And I was like, well, I've done property wrong. Like, I didn't get all my money out, blah, blah, blah. And I told them the prices I was buying it for. And I always remember one person saying, Ryan, I can't buy a car parking space in London for what you're buying property for.
Yeah.
Are you joking? Like, so anytime you find anything like that, let me know and I'll buy it. So I was like, hold on a minute here. So it kind of that, the sourcing side fell into it at that time as well.
And had you dropped out of the football at that point? Or were you still doing the coaching?
I was still doing it, but the classes were starting to, you know, I started to cut the classes.
Why was that? Did you just kind of lose love with it, or did you kind of?
I think so. I think it was the time thing. It was so it was all consuming all the time, every night, same. Going.
I suppose it's alright when you're in your early 20s and mid 20s, but when you get a bit older, you're like, nah, fucking need a life.
Totally, and I think again, parents not laugh at it. I think the ADHD came into a wee bit as well. Two routine, two same every year. I was like, there needs to be a change, like just how the brain works. So. And I also saw not a way out, I wouldn't say it like that, because I always said I'll go back to coaching football and that, and I'd love to do it in a volunteer aspect when I don't need to get paid for it. I'd love to do that when I get older. So I think it was more to do, I saw the way out in terms of getting my time back and putting money, and again, I'd always been relatively, I would like to think, good. I never spent money when you know, the boys at school used to always take the pick saying, Ryan's probably got his paper round money still under his bed type thing. So I would never spend it a lot. And I think then when I saw that way of, hold on, property's something you buy, it grows in value, you get money, and but in the whole aspect, I was like, yeah, it was a light bulb moment. So I did very much start to transition more into the property side at that point. And again, then when just before COVID hit, it was a perfect time to kind of stop the classes. So that was maybe 3-4 years ago now that I kind of...
Yeah, you did the sourcing for a while then, and how did you find that then? Like, do you feel like you gave it a really good shot, like, or were you just kind of dabbling?
Again, because I always had a full-time job as well at the time, it was probably more part-time dabbling, you could call it that, but I took it pretty serious to start. But again, it was one of those where, especially like in my 20s, I was just trying stuff, just seeing what stuck, you know, seeing where I wanted to dedicate my time to, I suppose, in that way. And I very much saw the whole buy-to-lets and buying a house, it's an asset and everyone needs a roof over their head type as the main way. But again, the sourcing stuff kind of fell off the back of meeting mostly English investors down south, and it just transpired that a lot of them would reach out because they'd met you, and again, because these courses were 3-4 days long,
you got a good network instantly.
That kind of know, like, and trust. You were going to dinner with these people, and you were seeing them the next day in the event, and so you brought up a bit of a rapport, and people would reach out. So I kind of felt, I suppose I felt like an obligation that I needed to help these people out a wee bit, because I was buying 50 grand properties in Glasgow. That
thinking you got it wrong.
I thinking I'd got it all wrong, and
sell
then
to you for 4 grand.
Exactly, and then thinking, hold on, well, it can't be that wrong if these guys aren't buying car parking spaces for it. So I would say I gave the sourcing a relatively good go, but again, it didn't stick because it just was, again, going back to time consuming a wee bit from what you're actually maybe producing, and people pulling out and people wanting to do a deal but the mortgage falls through, and it just got a wee bit like,
see that thing,
I could better put my time into.
See that thing you're talking about, trying to find the perfect deal. A lot of that resonates with me, right? So when I started Dark Property back in 2017, I started sourcing for investors as well. That's how I built my first few properties and started building the let portfolio, right? So I was going out and finding stuff that it wasn't a perfect deal. It wasn't to get all the money out and stuff like that. But investors, like you say, were happy to buy it.
Yeah.
And me thinking at that point, that's not a great deal, but it suits them.
Yeah.
See, looking back on it now and how some of those properties have gone up in value, I'm like, that's a fucking crack deal. I wish I'd bought that myself. Do you know what I mean?
I think half the properties I sourced, I kicked myself after it and I went, fuck, I wish I bought that myself.
Exactly.
But honestly,
it would only been at 10 or 12% discount. You'd be like, fucking turn your nose up at that. I'm the one that.
100%. That's exactly how it went. But like you say, looking back now, there's about 3 or 4 that really stick out. I was like, oh, I wish I bought that.
And the capital growth, and they say, you know, a lot of money is made in the capital appreciation and stuff. Even places like you're mentioning there, like I know you're stay in Canvas Line, but like Rutherglen and that locally has done really well, you know, and certain properties have really come up in value. So I
always found that when I started, again, I was probably roughly the same time, 2016, 2017, I started really looking into it and buying. I think that's maybe 2017 I bought my first one. And then I bought a couple in quick succession and went there. But And I suppose sometimes in these courses they say don't do this, but I ended up buying where I was living. So I was in when I moved from Livingston to here about 10, 12 years ago, just after I got back for travelling and stuff, I rented a property out in Rutherglen, signed up buying a property in Rutherglen. I then moved to Brigton, bought 2 there, then moved somewhere and bought a couple. So I just, wherever I've kind of been, and I think it's because I then ended up knowing the area, and I knew the area, I knew the prices, I knew what people were selling, like what we're selling for. And again, probably at the time, maybe back to the whole ADHD thing, and I was sourcing, I was doing this, that I was like, I'm going to buy in areas that I could maybe Airbnb them, you know, a kind of plan B, but I've never Airbnb, like I've always just rented them out and just got a rent. But I looked at areas where I thought I could do Airbnb, and then I ended up actually the first quite a few that I bought in those areas were actually pretty good, and it kind of just went for there.
When did you get? Did you say you got ADHD? Yeah.
Aye.
When did you get a diagnosis for that, and how's that kind of like
4,
right
3, 4?
And how does that affect your kind of life? Like what sort of
Probably
things?
doesn't affect it as much anymore because you can do, you know, you're out and about doing what you want. But I have probably found over the years that you've, not that I wouldn't even say bored easily, but I've always wanted to do something, the next thing. And again, probably coming out, I read a couple of good books, not really about ADHD, but more just about how you focus yourself and time and moving on at the right point. School struggled because you're in a room with a chalkboard and a...
Well, at 4, I mean, you're talking about going back, and what age are you now? You're talking about going back 30 years ago, aren't you?
Yeah.
So at that point, ADHD was really talked about, really, was it?
A bit of a taboo. I was, again, most of the time in school, I was just the bad kid and with the bad parents. Yeah. You know, it was like, well, they just don't parent him well and he's just a bit unruly and stuff.
Did you struggle at school then,
Yeah, I probably struggled in school more because I was stuck in four walls with an old crabbit get at the front and 30 of my pals and a chalkboard. Like somebody with ADHD, it's never going to work for them. So I think school environment, I would say I struggled. But again, even the end of school, I kind of always come back to this theme of like my time. Like I knew when I got to kind of 4th year, there was nowhere else to be. I had to be here. I couldn't go out and work. I couldn't do that. I was only 14, 15. So may as well get my exams. So I kind of did knuckle down a bit and passed all my exams.
We ended up going to, was it Stirling Uni you went to?
Stirling Uni, yeah.
Do sports.
Doing sports at Stirling. So I done fine when I got to the point where I knew I had to do it. Because I thought, I always remember thinking to myself, I don't want to have to repeat 5th year at school, which I don't think you can do. But do you know what I mean? I don't want to have to be here if I don't need to be here. So I never done my 6th year and went on and uni and stuff after that.
And what's your view on that whole education system that we kind of drum into our kids as a society? Because like you don't have any kids at the moment, do you?
Not yet, no.
But like if you did or when you do, that whole kind of thing that we just put on kids that it's expected, that you need to go to uni and all that, get the best grades possible and all the rest of it. Yeah. How do you view that kind of approach?
I think again, it depends what you're doing, I suppose. Like if you're going out and doing just makeup courses here, and I don't want to slander any courses, but if you're doing a course that there's not really much, in terms of market research, not much jobs and way to make an income, then why are you doing it in a way just for something to do? And same with the school system. I think the school system, you learn your basic stuff that you need, reading, writing, arithmetic, all the rest of it, but I think it's more the routine it instills in you, the discipline, a lot of people, you're going somewhere you don't want to be, and you've got to do it, and it's the same problem when you come in the job environment. There's days you don't want to do.
Almost like it conforms you and beats you into submission to accept it.
You're not a fan of the whole go to uni and all that, are you? And drum that in your kids. I'm kind of the same.
I actually slagged off Sam Dyer the other day and said, this is why I don't respect anyone with a degree, because you're thick as fuck, right? And I drove down, I had my car into the garage. It says, can you drive my car to my house to drop off the car and we'll drop you off? Sam drives to his own house with it, and I'm like, where the fuck is he? And phoning him. Well, I'm going home with your car. I'm like, well, how can I drive two cars home to my house?
Yeah.
I was like, this is why I don't respect a degree. No common sense.
That's a shame.
I've just publicly slated him on the podcast again.
It's a bit unfair to slag somebody when they're not even here to defend them.
That's happened. He can come on and...
But no, back to the school kind of thing. I think it instills certain morals and discipline, but Why are you not like? So I've been in a couple of schools since I started the business to teach them more of the financial education side of things.
Love that,
because
love that.
You don't get in. You don't get it. You don't get it, but the people that are there teaching you, a lot of the time
they don't get it.
Yeah, you're like some of them are my clients. Like I'm helping them with their financial side of things. So, and it's not to disrespect anybody in any positions, but you don't know what you don't know, and if you're not getting told these things when you're young, then no wonder you come into the. And again, even when I was growing up, like there was like interest rates are low, debt's easy to get. Like it's just.
I'd imagine you'd be great at that stuff because obviously you've got the background with the kids coaching as well. So you're obviously good with kids. So going into that the school environment stuff like that, I think just schools should be doing way more of that sort of stuff. Do you know what I mean? Allocating budgets to that or whatever it is they need to do to get you in.
Massively, but I suppose that's another story about why the school's set up and what they actually do.
Exactly. Getting back to your own sort of route then, your own path.
Yeah.
So obviously, you know, you built up a few buy-to-let properties. I think you've got 6. I think you've
10 now.
Oh, is it 10? Right.
10
okay.
Now.
Brilliant. So that obviously, you know, like is part of your investing strategy, but then I see you, obviously I follow you quite closely on social media, and I kind of saw you going from like all in property to then sort of taking a bit of a sort of change of direction, obviously into this setting up your own business and, you know, a financial planner now. So talk us what was going through your mind about that and why go a change of route.
I think, well, kind of going from coming back the way it's now looking at a more holistic view of wealth building, you know, and not just wealth building. I think the way I always say it is it's sustainable wealth. It's sustainable. Has to be sustainable wealth.
And was there a moment or a book or a video or a something?
Yeah, probably. Again, books and that education thing drums into there's other things out there, not just this one kind of concentrated asset, just the one asset class. And you can kind of, you know, there's different ways to skin a cat, I suppose. But there was a time when, again, you probably get to I was 28, 27, and I'd got a few properties behind me, and you're going to the network events and you're seeing the rental income coming in and you're remortgaging and buying another one. You're thinking, this is brilliant. And then again, because the way interest rates were at the time and the bank's rates and stuff, I hated keeping any money in bank accounts because I wasn't doing anything. So it's like anything I getting into property, get it in, to the point where I think it was January 2020, I got this massive tax bill that I didn't expect or I didn't think, like, plan for.
How much?
It was about 10.
Aye.
10 grand.
You just didn't have that lying about at the time.
No, I had nothing.
Aye.
I had nothing lying about. So I had about a 10 grand tax bill. I'd flooded my bathroom, so I was trying to get that sorted. I'd crashed into my neighbour's parked car in the driveway, and I'd done, at the time, whatever car I had, it's like the DPF filter, diesel filter, something in a car, all in the same month. And I was like, fuck, what do I do now? Now I thought I was this pretty decent property investor, knew his stuff, knew the market, and I thought, how have I got to this point where I'm scraping about money from friends and family and just to pay tax bills and everything else? I was like, there must be more to this investing, not even just property, just investing thing in general, making money, building wealth, then I'm missing something. And I think that's where, and then throughout the time reading books and just trying to expand your knowledge, I thought, right, there must be something better. Then heard about, again, around the COVID time, financial planning, how it works. I kind of got told a wee bit about what a good financial plan looks like, and I was like, well, that's kind of, I'm doing, apart from the investing part, I'm kind of doing all the rest the opposite way, and I'm not doing, you know, even when we come to, you're talking about retirement type stuff and all that, I was opting out of pensions with work, and I was pulling money out of these, which looking back off, like a massive mistake for me, 6-7 years ago now that what I know about how it all works. So I'm probably made a lot of financial mistakes in the cloud of thinking I was actually doing really well, to then go, right, I wanted to educate myself, and as well as educate myself, I wanted to think, well, I know there's a lot more people out there, whether they're involved in property or not investing at all, that could really do with like knowing these types of things. Probably again, like when I got involved in property, it was a bit of a light bulb moment. Like, this is what else I can do.
And did you have a wee cushion there from the income from the buy-to-lets to allow you that time to go and retrain effectively?
All right, okay.
Aye, so effectively you had to retrain. So did you have that cushion behind you then, that buy-to-let portfolio, which was providing you with a bit of income then to get you by until obviously you started up generating those leads and new clients for your financial planning business?
Yeah, I think, again, going just investing in general and what I do as a financial planner, it's going back to, like, why are you doing this? What's it all for? Like, why did I start buying property at mid-20s? Like, what? So for me at the time, it was for a little bit extra income and to get my time back from the coaching and everything else. Thankfully, doing that, it's led me to a point which I didn't realise this was going to be a choice, because at the time I was like, I enjoy my job. Like, I know a lot of people want to replace their job income and leave their job. I didn't want to do that because I enjoyed it, so it was fine. I just wanted a bit more income, a bit more security, safety net, and I liked the whole let's build wealth. What it's then transpired to X amount of years later is that it allowed me to transition from a job to retrain with not that much financial worries. I think as well, like, at the time, and again, looking into and learning and studying this stuff, I could see the picture, because it was around COVID time. I could see the picture of, you know, the furlough loans and, you know, pumping money out in the economy and all these different things. I was like, the property prices were going sky high. I was like, this just seems a bit too good to be true, and a bit too, you know,
at that point you were probably cash flowing well because all your interest rates were dead low.
Yeah, so what's that quote, the be fearful and others are greedy? Greedy. It was that kind of thing. I could see everyone kind of being a bit greedy, and I was like, this looks a bit too good to be true. Plus I wanted to then transition into this new business. So I sold my property. I had a two bed house at the time, sold that and moved into a 1-bed flat.
What, the one you're living in? Yeah, this is your own home?
So the one I'm living in is just a wee 1-bed flat in Cambuslang.
Right, okay.
And I was previously in a two bed house and just sold it up and downsized because it meant my mortgage was lower, everything, you know, all my costs were lower, and it allowed me then the rental income to be at a point where it could sustain me transitioning into a new role.
Being financially free almost to kind of retrain.
Yeah, pretty much. So I could retrain. So I kind of went, you know, one step back, if you want to say, hopefully go two steps forward.
I love that. Yeah. I really like that because it's a lot of, again,
sacrifices that people are not
sacrifices and the long term, and they work hard and that, just to kind of, you know, in the short term you might have to suffer a wee bit for long term gain. But
yeah. So I knew I had to do something else to allow me to retrain and allow the rental income to not have to worry about it, and thankfully that you know, it worked out well. I think back in, you were saying about mortgage rates and that, back in like 2020, was it 2020, 2021, all my rates were coming up, so I just fixed them all in like 5 years and just thought I don't need to worry about this for 5 years. Plus I could see that with all the money getting pumped into the economy, interest rates are obviously only going to go one way. So I just thought I would just do all that, get myself secure, I don't need to worry about mortgages or anything for a couple of years, and it allowed me to concentrate on and moving into this space and retraining.
And luckily your costs were pretty low at that time as well, because obviously, like, so say you'd been I don't know, say you had like 3 kids or something like that, do you know what I mean? And it would have been like a lot harder, but luckily you're still at an age where you don't have those ties and expenses and costs and stuff like that. And
totally, it's obviously my situation isn't going to be the same for everyone that's looking to do those things. Like at that point I was single as well, so I had nobody, like the house was mine, I sold it and did what I wanted in a way, like to be able to transition into this. And again, looking at going back to the time and, you know, how much, you know, what your hourly rate is and all that kind of thing from what I was doing. I loved my job before, but it wasn't going to get me to where I wanted to get to in the future. Like something had to change. Plus I really enjoyed, and again, another event that maybe happened is that, you know, yourselves, like being in the property space and putting things on social media and stuff, you get friends and family and acquaintances reaching out going, how do you do this? And we talked about it before, it was kind of, you're giving them guidance, and I really liked when people phoned up or messaged and like, can you tell me a wee bit about how you do the property thing and how it works? So I really liked, I suppose, just helping people with giving them a bit more knowledge and the mistakes I made and what I could do, and then bringing that into a holistic view of things. It's probably what I get most out of what I do now, is just...
Talk us through the training period, Ryan. Like what would that involve them? Is it a course full-time?
Yeah, so first and foremost it was just get the exams through the CS Chartered Institute.
Do you have to have? I mean, do you have to have been to uni or something like that previously, have a degree or anything like that, or do you just can anybody do this?
Yeah, well, again, you need to be. I suppose that is the degree. I suppose is going through your exams. Exams took pretty much a year. I think there were 6 exams.
And this is a private thing that you have to pay for.
Yeah, like, so it's through. I'm going to get this wrong. It's CIS, Chartered Institute of. I can't remember the exact terminology, CIS or CSI or something like that. So you need to just register with them and just go through all the courses and exams with them to get to that point. And then there was training for probably another 3 to 6 months after that.
You had to pay for that yourself?
Yeah,
that wasn't
actually how you then do the job day to day. And again, I think quite rightly, most of it's to do with the regulation side of things. That you're not going to give advice that's going to put anybody in a detrimental position first and foremost.
Because you need to be registered with the what's it called?
FCA.
And obviously that's something you need to pay yearly, is it?
Yeah.
Membership.
Fee and all that. Yeah, and the same with the CIS as well. It was a yearly membership too.
Yeah. And how hard was it going through those exams?
Were tough. The exams were tough. They were really interesting, like you say, when you were talking about like reading into pensions and watching videos like that. It was a lot to take in. It was tough, but it was because I was interested in it and I wanted to do it. It wasn't like it was.
What is it, like essays or multiple choice, or how do the exams look like?
The first couple were multiple choice.
Yeah,
but again, it's one of those ones where you think multiple choice easy and get it, but the multiple choice answers were so close together that you really had to know your stuff, or it was like the wrong phrase and you would so the exams were like you would have overall market economic exams, how the overall economy works. Then you would specific into investment principles and how investment works, and then pensions was one of them. And then the last one was a kind of essay style where you would get cases and you would have to go in and research what it is that you should and could be putting together as an advice point of view for these case studies. And then you had to go in for 4 hours write up these different case studies. And
did having that bit of proper experience and investment experience help doing it, or did it not come in it?
No, I definitely think it definitely helped, because again, having that investment background, having to know a wee bit about the economy and market conditions and how it worked and what interest rates are doing and more, like all these things definitely stood me in good stead to understand even some of the jargon to start with. I'd probably been exposed to that anyway.
Did any of the multiple choice questions say what makes a good BRRR? Is it all your money back out?
I'd have got that wrong anyway. Definitely.
No, I mean, it's great that you went through that. I mean, I've often thought, like in my own business, thinking, right, if I was to start from scratch and I had to retrain and do something totally different, going back to absolutely zero business, try to generate new customers and all that. So talk to us about that, because you've done your exams. Presume did you pass first time, or did you?
Thankfully, yeah. Yeah,
it's pretty on the spot.
So that was successful, and then how do you now grow a business?
Yeah.
So how does that work?
Well, again, going back to what you're saying about I think the property side and the investment side has definitely helped. I think the social media side and putting things out online's definitely helped, and it's an easier way to attract. Because again, you think about business wise, like the main task you're doing every day is the highest income generating tasks, and for me it's making sure that people are understanding what it is I do, and bums on seats, I suppose, like getting in front of people that want or need financial advice or financial planning. So and again, what I've probably done probably in the past year is really focus on myself, like me as taking that kind of avatar. So it's really been investors, business owners, people like that who I find a lot of business owners, I've been even in business for 5-6 years. They're so, and yourself, full on in business that they don't.
You forget about
the other principles and the planning aspects. It really means that you're tight and you're watertight in your plan. And then again, even like what you were talking about earlier about like then retirement stuff. Now, a lot of the guys that I'm talking to just now are like, I don't even want to think about retirement. Well, it's happening.
You can't need to think about it 20, 30 years in advance.
Exactly. And it's like, well, if we don't talk about it, you're going to be coming back to me in 10 years' time, getting on at me why we didn't talk about it.
Yeah. What do you feel about the biggest thing for you has helped? You're talking about social media and that, like networking events. For you, what works in your business to bring in the kind of leads and stuff and the initial conversations?
Yeah, probably the social media side helped to start with. The way I look at it is because I know them in a way, like the business owner type things. Like I've had a couple of businesses that I've ran and stopped, and tax bills and all these different mistakes, I suppose. It's then trying to put myself in front of business owners. So, you know, a lot of the times, again, things like even what you guys have got, like communities are people that come together to talk, like-minded people that talk about whether it's property, whether it's just investing, whether it's business, whatever it is, and then finding out what niches in businesses, industries that in a way really need the help and really could do with the aspects of financial planning. Again, a lot of the time you'll find it's business owners that have not got any time of the day. You know, they're out from 6 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night type of thing. They don't want to think about anything else. You find that those ones are the ones that really could do with the help and really appreciate it, I suppose.
And if I come to you then, say you've taken me on as a new client, right? We're having our meetings and discussions. I've got £100,000 to invest. This is a question that's not...
Nick is looking for free financial advice here.
Yeah, how do you play that conversation? What do you look at, and how do you kind of like approach it, and how do you go about recommending essentially what investments, you know, somebody with, is it all, I mean, you have to look into all the different individual.
Well, again, I suppose it's one of those things that it would take about an hour to an hour and a half to even get to the point where I could tell you the options you've got with 100 grand, because you really need to know. And I suppose it's the beauty of it, and the bit I probably enjoy the most is you need to know the person. For me to give you regulated financial advice, I need to know, you know, you as a person, your family, property, what your views are on money, what you want to do in the future, all these types of things for me then to put you in a best position with your money, because it could be that you've got property and you're pretty secure and your family, but what we talked about there, just because we were talking about it, you don't have any sort of pension provision. So it's like, well, what? But at the same time, you might not be able to put that 100 grand into a pension because your capacity for loss is high. So if you not lost that money but had that tied away for another 15 years, actually you need access to that in potentially 5 years or 10 years, because you've got an event or a plan that you want to move abroad, or you want to move house, or you want to go in more hot. So it's all these things will come into it for me to then best position what is best for you, because you guys are, you know, relatively similar in what you do, but what you would do with your 100 grand could be completely different than what you would do. So it's really about knowing the person, the background, and then figuring out the best, whether it's an investment vehicle or it's just, you know.
Assuming like the risk appetite comes into play as well.
Risks are probably big.
So what asset classes over the time that you've been doing this then, you know, what assets have you seen that have been performing well for your clients then?
Well, again, over the last year or two, not a lot, just with the economic conditions, I suppose, but it's just one of those ones where, again, going back to knowing what each asset class, the underlying principles of the asset classes. So
just for the listeners, to cut it down into basics, generally as, you know, a financial planner, where are you putting people's money?
For me, depending on their time horizon, I would be putting it more if they've got, again, the way I look at investing, it's a long-term thing. You know, if you're looking to invest or put money into something for 2 years because you need it in 2 years, well, right now stick it in your bank account. You know, it's not really, cash is still considered an asset because you put money in and you're getting a rate of return. Whereas if you've got a longer term horizon, you don't need it for maybe 10 years, 15 years, then we'd be looking at more the higher risk asset classes, which would be your stocks and shares, your alternative investments, potentially commodities, depending on how they're doing. And we would put it in something that we can ride the waves of the next 2, 3, 5 years. So then when it hits the 10 year, when you've got that time limit that you want it back for whatever reason, then we've managed to grow the capital enough. But then what we call lifestyling is we will then pull it down to a point where we're then preserving the capital we've grown. So when you're getting ready to take the money, it's in assets that are lower risk, that are more secure.
And why would I come to somebody like you and pay you for advice rather than just going on like Vanguard, getting the app and then just picking out they do different risks, don't they?
Yeah.
And you can go and say, right, I want high risk, I'll just put 50 grand into that. Why would I come to you?
It depends what you, because I would say first and foremost, you're coming to me because not you've done something wrong, but it's because you're wanting somebody to hold your hand type, that you want someone in your corner. Again, we talk about it in the property investment world where you want a good power team, people around you.
That know a bit more than you, or
yeah, exactly. That's why I suppose people come to you guys for the networking events and listening to the podcast, because they want a little bit more knowledge, understanding how to do it. And again, coming back to the time aspect, to learn this type of, although it's still investing in an investment, it's a different asset class, it's a different type of investment that also takes on different investment strategies. To learn that properly and really, it'd probably take as long as you doing the whole property investing and learning that. So it really comes back down to a time aspect. You've got 3 kids, family, working all the time, doing all these different jobs, but do you have time to then add another task? It should work. Don't get me wrong, it's something that would be good for you and it would help you build more wealth and create more choice and freedom and all these aspects, but have you got the time for it?
It's almost like paying a sorcerer. You don't have time to find the property, pay a sorcerer.
Yeah.
Don't find to plan your financial plan and go and pay someone that does it.
And why is it like, I mean, I haven't met many financial planners over the years, right? But you tend to find that when you bring up property, they never seem to want to engage in the conversation, and they don't want to recommend that you invest in property. So why would that be?
I think, one, because, I don't mean this up, probably not a lot of financial advisors do invest in property. So they probably, like the other way around, you get property investors saying, I don't want to invest in the market because I'm just so heavily involved in property because I know the game. And it's probably the flip side, like what I've even just found recently is not a lot of financial advisors invest in property, so they don't know the other side. And then probably the other one is from what financial advisors are doing in terms of investment vehicles, they're a lot probably more tax efficient than what property can be. And I think there's probably then, that's maybe the other way why financial advisors are saying, why the hell are you putting in property? I mean, you can stick it in your eyes or stick it in your type thing. From the tax point of view, I think more than why people are actually involved. You're not involved in property or involved in putting it just for the tax implication. There's other aspects, but they're probably the reason.
What I was told was that it's because they don't make commissions on property investments, obviously. Whereas, like, if you've got a fund that you're managing and it's how does the actual business model work of a financial planner? Like, how do you make your money?
So that goes without saying. Obviously, if they're not investing in something that you're managing for them, then they're not going to make a commission. But that's just like any kind of business, I suppose. So it's a bit going back to the property courses. Like they're telling you to do one thing for a certain reason, I suppose. But I wouldn't say that's why I'm different. But I understand the property side of things. So if I feel like when we sit down and have a chat that property is the right way for you to go for what you're trying to achieve, then go and do property, or not go and do it, but these are the principles and these are the things that I've done over the years, and these are what you should look for.
Would you advise diversification on that? So I suppose if you, back to the next example, like if you were to come and go, I've got 100 grand to invest and want to start the portfolio, or the portfolio investment, you'd probably look at us and go, well, you're already heavily invested in property, time to diversify that 100 grand away and it's something else, so you're not as focused on the one asset class. Is that?
And I think that's probably one of the reasons I got into financial advice as well, is the diversification aspect of knowing that different economic and market conditions are going to lend itself to different asset classes better than others. And for me to have a long-term view on this, long-term sustainable wealth, as I always talk about, then I need to be a wee bit in everything, not too heavily concentrated in one over the other. So I think that's definitely an aspect. And I always say, use all these different vehicles, your properties, your pensions together. Don't use one over another, because they're all their own. A pension is a pension, and there's a reason it's a pension. Property is property, and there's a reason it's property. And you do this, and don't try and in some ways confuse them.
Or compare them, I suppose.
Or compare them. Use them together as a blended, again, I talk about blended approach. Use a blended strategy and blended approach to these things. So I've never ever sat down with somebody and said, don't do that over something else, because it might be the right thing for you.
And how does it work then? Like, I'm really interested in the kind of business models as well with financial planners. So, like, obviously there'll be, I would imagine, initial consultancy fee or something like that to set things up. But then do you get like a reoccurring income from funds that are invested as well? How does that work? Structure, I can't talk for every financial advisor because they might be structured slightly different. But from my point of view, it's like, the way I describe it, it's like a performance fee. I don't take
time fees. So we sit down and have a meeting, it doesn't cost you anything. You know, we'd come up with a plan or a recommendation that you're like, yeah, let's do that. Then once we put it and invest it, there's a fee to start with for us putting the work in and investing the money, and then there's a yearly kind of management fee. But
is that tied to the performance? Well, it's like a percentage.
Yeah,
of
I suppose
it's return or whatever.
Yeah, so it's a percentage of what's invested. So if you're, which we hope we wouldn't do, but if you've lost money or if you've not made money this year, then what we take's much less.
Right.
If you're making money, I'm making money in a way. And I think it's having it based on the kind of performance aspect more than a time aspect, then it means I'd like to think there's more value for money in it. You know, if I'm doing my job and growing your wealth, and we take a little...
You're rewarded for it as well.
Yeah, and I feel like that's probably the fairest way to do it over...
So you don't, in your role then, you don't need to become like an expert in like, you know, the stock market or anything like that. That's not really your role, is it? Do you obviously create relationships with different like, is it like fund managers and stuff like that have the funds have got different levels of risk, haven't they? And then obviously you're trying to allocate and match up that risk with the client.
So you the way I look at it is probably, and again, it was a good book I read years ago, I think I've got a very project-based mindset and a routine-based mindset. And the way I look at the project of bringing on a client in a way is you've got the initial start of it, which is the meeting and finding out about them and what they're looking to do with their 100 grand or whatever it is, and you've got the middle part, which is putting together the reports and illustrations and making sure they're watertight, regulated, and the advice is correct. And then there's the last part that it's then actually, if it is investing that they're doing and it is putting money into the right tax structures, pensions, ISAs, whatever it is, it's the most tax efficient for them, is then finding the right place to put it. And depending on, and it always goes back, depending on their time horizon and their risk and what they're wanting to do.
What if it all goes wrong? I mean, what if they just lose all the money with you? Yeah, I mean, obviously that's why you're qualified and that's why you're registered. Yeah, but I mean, obviously there must be disclaimers there, you know, in the contract or in the paperwork to say, look, this, you know, is basically risky.
Yeah, it's risky.
So is that your reputation that's at stake effectively, or? But
I think even the first part, and again, it's a very, so I'm looking for, like, justified question and something that people would think, what the hell if all my money gets lost? But the way I look at it is that the funds that we're putting into and the portfolios that we're investing in are so heavily diversified that it would take, you know, we're diversified geographically. So, you know, we've got international equities, so we're diversified North America, South America, Europe, Asia, emerging markets, all these different places. Then we're diversified industry-wise. So, you know, in each of these different countries and areas of the world, different industries, sorry. So even within these geographical locations, we're in the banking industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the, you know, retail industry, property. We're in, so it would take all of them, I suppose, to go bust, a catastrophic absolute failure for every single asset class and fund that you're in to go bust for you to lose all your money. So
yeah,
I'm not going to say you can't,
and history obviously shows that consistently, you know, if you invest in the stock market, you know, over hundreds, you know, over 100 years, you know, consistently you will, you know, make and long term over the peaks and troughs.
Yeah, totally. And I think even in the different, if you break it down, and even the different asset classes you've got, you know, cash, bonds, equity, stock, like the stocks and shares, even commodities in a way, your golds and silvers and oil, each of them individually over a long-term time horizon have always went up in value. So if we then blend them together, put them in different locations, and again then using the right strategy with the fund managers that they're buying, whether it depends on the economic conditions, they're buying companies that they feel are going to grow in value, or if the economic conditions are slightly different, they're buying the growth companies that are already established but look like they're going to do even better. It all comes down to that. So it's,
have you got a rule of thumb as well, like how you'd allocate the funds? So would there be a certain percentage that you'd keep back for cash? Would a certain percentage be in a certain fund or in commodities or in property, or would you, is there?
Yes, based on the risk.
Yeah.
So if someone comes to me and they're a low risk averse, then we would be looking at assets and funds that when the interest rates, you know, skyrocket, those asset classes aren't going to come down as sharply as some higher risk assets, and vice versa. When certain economic conditions lend their hand, we want to be putting it into funds and asset classes that are really going to make that capital growth worth it. So it comes down to that. But going on what you said there as well, that we would always keep a little bit aside for cash. And the reason we would do that is so if there's any good opportunities that come up, we can like property investment. You would keep some money up beside and waiting for a good opportunity that comes up, or a couple of unencumbered properties that you can remortgage to. It's probably the same principle.
So, like, here's a question that gets spat out from ChatGTP for you.
Oh, wow. Those robots.
So, like, obviously, with the global economic factors, we've had pandemics, wars, Brexit and all the rest of it. How much do those kind of news events play into, like, how you're advising, your clients and all that? How do you...
Again, the news events then hold weight when it comes to the financial instruments, I suppose, or going back to economic conditions. If there's Brexit or there's a global pandemic, or like we kind of talked about before, the economy needs to get flooded with more money, which inflation and interest. So all these types of things, all events are going to affect the financial markets in slightly different ways. And it's about understanding the underlying principles of what drives these events and then the markets to then put either rebalance the portfolio, change it into a different risk asset, or move some of the money into different funds that might do better to do with the climate. So again, even just now, the way I kind of look at it in some ways is that we're on a bit of a downturn because of everything that's happened. We've just came out of COVID, but we rebounded quite well. But then we had a war, we've had inflation, we've had interest rates, we had a banking crisis in America not long ago. So all these things have lent its hand that the markets are on a bit of a downturn. But I suppose in the positive way is that right now you're getting more bang for your buck.
Mm-hmm. So if you buy now, then hopefully in again, 5-10 years,
using your $100,000, you can buy more assets, stocks and shares at a lower price now. So then when they rebound and come back up, which I believe the markets will recover.
When you look at those share prices as well over the pandemic and stuff like that, some of these, like, looking at those big tech companies and all that, oh my God, I mean, the way that Facebook's plummeted, I think Amazon as well.
But even on that point, this year, the top 10, companies in the S&P 500, so we just talk about America there, the top 10, I think there's a stat that they make up 80% of the growth this year. And the bottom, 490, are only making up 20%.
Well, and this year's probably been quite a bad year, right?
Yeah. But it just shows you that kind of depending on what strategy you're looking at and what you're, the growth companies, the big companies are still doing well. Even though there will be times in the way market conditions are that they're going to, not do as well, or their stock prices will fall. But I think with these companies being at the size they are and what they're doing in the world, again, if we go back to just why the markets go up, I believe it's mostly to do with productivity growth. You're producing, transactions are happening in every different industry all over the world. People are buying and selling, things are going up. These companies are the ones that are driving our consumerism. They're introducing chat GPs and IA and all these different things, and we are just consuming it. Mm-hmm. So the way, in some ways, I look at it, that how can they go bust?
Yeah.
If they're the ones that are driving the productivity.
Driving, always growing, always evolving, always going to the next industry.
Right, we better watch our time here, guys, but just... I'll take one more question. You go think for a bit of question as well, but like for me, it's like you're kind of quite new to business and that. I've been going a couple of years. Like, what's the kind of alarm bells when you sit down with a client, right? Just so that people know what not to say to a potential financial planner. Do you know what I mean? Because like I know from a letting agent point of view, like sometimes I'll get clients coming to me and they'll be like, right, okay, I'm looking to invest in property. Yeah. I'm needing like 15%, 15% yield, 15% return on investment. I'm looking to get all my money back out. Right. Do you know what I mean? I want to purchase properties under 50 grand or less. So these sort of things, and you're just sitting there going like, no, this not going to work. So what kind of perceptions have people got of investing their money, and like how do you kind of limit the expectation, if you like, what are the sorts of things that people say to you that you think,
I think property investors and people that are in this industry are probably quite unique And it is probably very percentage return money driven, I suppose, in that way. You know, you're not buying properties to lick the bricks and give it a cuddle at night. You're doing it for a certain reason. So I get that, but a lot of my clients will come to me and they just know they need to do something better with their money. So there's not, maybe we've not went down the rabbit hole enough to get to specific returns and what they need to pull out for this type of thing. It's more just, I'm really bad on money just now, or I've got money aside and I want to do something with it. Then thrown up against
or
the
they
wall.
might have run successful businesses presumably, and they've built up like profits and stuff, but they just they're not clued up on it,
Or maybe not just clued up on that next aspect of it. They know the businesses and what they've done to get to that point, but it's then again diversifying it, so not keeping it all in the business, putting it into other. I think something we've not touched on is just more the tax efficient structures of these different things, the way pensions work, the way, you know, you talked about your stocks and shares eyes of how that works, you know, in terms of the tax efficiency. So it's really looking at these different structures that business owners, I suppose, in that way can use, and it's also alleviating their time. It's not something else I need to learn and then need to put 10, 15, 20 hours a week into. You know, it's very much a long-term patient game, I suppose, in that sense. But if you're going at another aspect that the business owners in their 50s and they're ready to use this money soon, well, right now, stick it in an account. You know, okay, me telling you that and then going back to your property example ain't going to make me any money, but it's the best thing for you.
Well, you can get about 5% out of a
That's what I'm
savings account
saying.
now. So
Yeah,
I mean,
so it's really what's best for that person at the time and what they're wanting to do with it.
and if we can help you out, try to get some new customers and that, what's your kind of ideal customer avatar that we can, for people listening to this podcast?
Probably like what I kind of touched on during it there is a lot of the time it's business owners. Business owners that are time poor, I suppose. They might be doing very well in their business, but they've not thought about the other aspects of financial planning. They might not have money in a savings account. They might not have an emergency fund when they flood their bathroom and crash into their neighbour's car. And you have do you know what I mean? They might not have done these things. They might not have a retirement plan in place, and they're creeping into their 40 or whatever, and they're like, well, I've never even thought about it. You know, it's that kind of way of saying, well, how do you sell your business? Oh, well, I'll probably just give it to the kids, or I can't sell it, it's not a sellable bit. Then what do you do? So I think it's just opening those doors and asking those questions to those people that I feel can really do with a bit of planning, a bit of advice. So I would say, yeah, it would probably be, or I really enjoy talking to business owners.
And where can they reach out to you? Like, obviously you're pretty good with the social media content and the Instagram stuff. Is that the best place to get you?
I would say so, yeah. Website, Instagram are probably the two main ways, and then all the rest of my details, phone number, email, and that are on both platforms. So that's probably the best way. And like I say, I try and be relatively active, so I'll get back to you soon enough.
Brilliant. That was great. I really enjoyed the chat.
Super, Ryan. Cheers for that.
Coming
Thanks,
in.
guys.